We're here with the gentleman from Pelorus Home Inspections. I have Roland LeClair, the founding partner, and with 15 years of experience and 10,000 inspections under his belt, he's a wealth of knowledge in buildings, systems, and environmental science. I'm here with Adam Goldner, another founding partner of Pelorus Inspection and Environmental Research Group. He has extensive experience in carpentry and high-end residential construction. We also have Patrick Jones. He is a certified home inspector and a licensed real estate agent. So he's also a boxer. We brought in the champs today. So Patrick, from your perspective as both a realtor and a home inspector, how important is a pre-listing home inspection in achieving a top dollar sale? Selling a home isn't just about putting up a for sale sign. It's about strategy, marketing, and negotiation. But how do you know if you're making the right moves? I'm Judy Jernigan, recognized among the top 5% by the Atlanta Realtors, and your host of How to Sell Your Atlanta Home with Sage+Grace, Smart Homeowner Strategies, Successful Real Estate Sales. With a background in broadcasting, negotiation, and education, I bring a unique perspective to home sales, helping homeowners sell faster for top dollar and with less hassle, while understanding not just the financial side, but also the logistical and emotional considerations of a move. This show helps you plan ahead, navigate the market, and work more effectively with a realtor like me. You'll get expert insights from my guests, plus real actionable strategies to sell with confidence. Now, here's the show, moving you forward with sage advice and grace.
Absolutely. I think a pre-listing inspection can be invaluable. You're going to get to understand what you have on your hands in terms of your current home, and also what a prospective buyer might be finding and might be asking you to correct in the future. So it's great to have that knowledge as you go into that. That can help you price things. That can help you decide what you need to disclose or maybe what you want to fix on your own beforehand.
Right, perfect. So, Adam, tell me a little bit more about how a pre-listing home inspection is different from once you're under contract and a home buyer has an inspection.
Well, when we're talking about a traditional residential home inspection for a buyer, it's more of a they want to know everything. So there, of course, there's an emphasis on determining everything from the large, the major, the costly, the serious, to the much more minor, more granular doorstop issues, loose hardware, stuck windows. That stuff is far less relevant in our view to a pre-listing inspection because the person you're doing the inspection for often is, of course, familiar with the home. They know these little things. They don't need to be informed of them necessarily. So we are focused more on what's likely to hit a person in the transaction process. What might be identified during an inspection as a surprise for them, costly, invasive repair, something that could slow or potentially derail the process going forward. So that's much more of an emphasis, whereas those are, of course, an emphasis of any home inspection, but they need to know everything in a traditional buyer-focused inspection. Whereas for pre-listing, we're arming you to know what to expect. There is also some emphasis on what might be something to repair in advance of listing the home. But very often, that's not even the recommendation. Sometimes it's being aware of what it needs so that you're not surprised if it hits you down the road. Right. Personally, I don't want to speak for the others, but my attitude regarding repairs related to a pre-listing inspection, they vary a bit. It kind of depends on the scenario. It's not always the case that I would recommend you take that list of findings and repair them all. That's often unnecessary. I mean, most people who buy a home, certainly a home that's existed for years or some number of years, expect to find things in an inspection report. There's going to be something in every inspection report. So it's not so much about eliminating things as it is about being aware of what's to be encountered. Now, there are exceptions. There are things that could be particularly alarming to a buyer that maybe the recommendation then would be to spend some time and money and effort to just kind of remove that concern.
Yes, I agree. And it's going to depend on the home and the situation and what the items are.
Of
I
course.
will say one of some of the absolute smoothest home sales I have had. I've had pre-listing inspections
Mhm.
where we set out on the kitchen counter. Here's a copy of that inspection. Here were the top 5 things that the home inspector found that we thought might be most concerning to a home buyer,
Sure.
and we've addressed them.
Yeah.
And here's the paid work receipt for that. Check,
Mhm.
done, not a problem. I'm even had, and I'm not necessarily suggesting this is a best path, but some home buyers will say, you know what, they already had a home inspection, they've shared it, they addressed the major issues, we're good.
Yeah.
I just can make
It
everything.
certainly happens, and again, we're happy to accommodate. I mean, we do have situations where we do a pre-listing inspection, and then lo and behold, we're fortunate enough to be hired to do the inspection for a buyer. We've already inspected this home, but so we'll conduct that
We'll do
inspection.
it
But
again
even
if
then, the
things
report
change.
might be bigger, might be more broad because of the difference in the perspective of our client.
So, Roland, do you mind walking around this home for us and talking with us about what the most common items are that you see that home sellers might want to keep in mind when they're getting their home ready to sell?
Sure, absolutely. One of the larger issues that we find are related with water. Um,
Yes.
so uh, gutters, how they drain, are the
Yes.
downspouts clogged, and the grade is the grade sloping gradually away from the home in order to carry the water away from the structure. The longer that water, if the grade is negative and it slopes and drains towards the home, there's potential for water entry as a result. Water sits there long enough, it's going to find a path of least
Like,
resistance or create the path for least resistance.
even you've done tens of thousands of home inspections, so far more than me, but I do know that, yeah, so many times it's something simple like cleaning out your gutters or making sure the downspout is fully directed away from the foundation of the home. We see wet basements and wet crawl spaces with critters being attracted to that moisture, mold being attracted to that moisture, and it's can be a simple fix just
Absolutely.
by cleaning your gutters and getting your downspouts to direct water away from the home. So I'm really glad you started with that.
Well, and it's good to catch that early because if it
Yes.
it, it goes on and becomes deferred maintenance, then it can become a much larger issue, more expensive for repairs.
And there's a lot of things we note. I would add that people often are surprised by the fact that some of the most important things to be done around a home are not necessarily costly or difficult. So there's a lot of things that can be identified again in the context of a pre-listing inspection where for minimal effort and you can eliminate something that from the perspective of an inspector is important, even serious, but potentially inexpensive to address. And Roland hits on that with water and drainage. That's a good example where inadequate drainage or improper slope of grade, these are often relatively easily, inexpensively addressed, but we have a lot of concern about it because of the potential it can have for the home. So cleaning gutters, another good example. Cheap, relatively easy, and significant impact on function.
Right, right.
Well, that being said, too, I also noticed the house behind us has a negative slope on a couple of the gutters, so they're not draining properly. This side and this little section right here.
Let's walk around maybe to the side and back of the home and see what else is on your mind, what else you're going to be looking for, and what areas of a home are and are not inspected.
So I also feel the roof is an important part, and one of the things that most homeowners aren't aware of is that the manufacturer of most shingles recommend periodic service and maintenance. And the reason behind that is because there are components used to install and to water seal the roof that are not they don't have the same warranty configuration as the shingles do.
The shingles can last longer than like the flashing.
Then the flashing, then the sealant that's on top of exposed nails on your plumbing boots, any other roof penetrations, and even the shingles that lie beneath windows. Often the flashing lies beneath that, and they'll lay a small course of shingles there using face nails, roofing nails. But a lot of times those nails won't see any sealant on them. And once water starts to get and follow that nail shaft down into the material, the roof sheathing, and into the attic
Hmm.
space. Now it's created a path for future water to follow the same direction.
So, getting your roof maintenance done on your
Yeah,
roof
the
on a routine basis is something homeowners can think about to prevent problems when it comes to
future
inspection time.
problems. And usually in comparison to the roof, it's relatively inexpensive. I mean, any roof where a contractor's got to throw up a 16-foot ladder to get up there, there's typically a premium attached to those repairs. But the manufacturer recommends service and maintenance on the shingles every 8 to 10 years, just to help
That's
prolong that longevity.
That's definitely something that's not on a lot of homeowners' radar, to have
Absolutely.
their roof just maintenance done. If there's not, usually it's something we're reactive to. A homeowner's like if they think there's some sort of problem, but
Well, the
okay.
biggest thing too, I think, is most homeowners don't get to read the packaging on their shingles. The contractors show up, they've got a dump
Right.
truck or a dumpster they put in, and they scrape the old roofing off, and everything with the new roofing that they're not using goes into that trash bin, and so the homeowners never really get to utilize that. And for some strange reason, the roofing contractors don't upsell future service and maintenance. So
Right. Let's walk into the back. We've worked our way into the crawl space or basement area of the home. Lots of things in here to talk about.
yeah, definitely not a an absence of material to cover. I mean, clearly this time of year is really important, especially in Atlanta, to maintain your cooling system, your HVAC system. There's a handful of things that we can often point out to somebody preparing their home for sale. And one of those main components would be servicing their system. Most homeowners don't understand the mechanics behind their system. And so keeping a clear airway path for your HVAC system becomes really important. And that really starts at the outside where you have a compressor that circulates the coolant. But even that system out there has fins that and a fan on the inside that pulls the air in. So it becomes important to ensure that you've got good bit of clearance between vegetation and any solid surfaces and your condensing unit, and that the refrigerant line on the outside is in good condition. The refrigerant line insulation covers the copper refrigerant line, insulates it to prevent dropping of condensation and also warming of the coolant as it transitions from outside to inside. And then, of course, when that refrigerant line reaches inside, it connects directly to the evaporator coil, where it essentially frosts the evaporator coil. Then the blower circulates the air across that evaporator coil and distributes it throughout the house. So maintaining a clean evaporator coil becomes important for the maintenance of the system as well. And then filter changes. It's not uncommon.
Change your filter.
Yeah, and
Yes.
every filter is different. You know that most filters are identified by their MERV rating. And the MERV rating, you can go high, you can go low, and there's a sweet spot right in the middle, in my opinion. You get too high a MERV rating, you're going to restrict airflow. You get too low of a MERV rating, and you're going to allow extraneous air to bypass the filter. Plus, you're going to be changing it every 15 to 30 days.
So a takeaway for homeowners is change your air filter
Yep.
and have an HVAC technician come out on a regular basis and service your heating and cooling. Homeowners, I will second this thought. Home buyers are going to ask the homeowner when the last time they had their HVAC serviced. In fact, it's even on our disclosure forms. It asks that question
Yes.
up front. And of course, the age is something that people like to know as well, but that's something their home inspector can tell them.
Well, and it's also when we do a preemptive conversation with most clients to ask about their concerns, and a lot of those concerns are brought to our attention as a result of past experiences
Right.
that a buyer might have, and
Yes.
of course we, as a pre-listing inspection, we like to try to eliminate as many surprises for the seller as we can.
So we're in would have been like more of a crawl space or was exposed dirt here. It has been encapsulated. What are some of the biggest problems you see in crawl spaces?
Well, moisture is a top one, and it doesn't necessarily have to be water entry. It could also be the lack of proper circulation through the crawl space. Now, your crawl space is encapsulated here, so that passive ventilation has been eliminated to create what I believe I think I hear a heat recovery ventilator or an energy recovery ventilator back here. But basically what that's doing, since you've closed off the passive ventilation, is it's taking in the cool damp air and discharging warm dry air and turning this space of the home into what's referred to as semi-conditioned space. And so we feel you got a healthy environment down here. this is your foundation, so it's going to assist in keeping the rest of the house healthy as well.
I had a home buyer client the other day asked me a first-time home buyer asked me a very fair question. They said people throw around the term HVAC. What does that mean? And I'm like, that's fair. We throw around, there's so much jargon. So heating, venting, air conditioning, but that's still a broad term because there are different types of heating equipment. So we have heat pumps, we have furnaces. People come here from up north and they talk about boilers.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
there's different components throughout the country. You start to get out to the West Coast, areas of Montana, Idaho. A lot of those homes don't even use central air just because the conditions are so moderate. I mean, they might hit 95 degrees during the day, especially Montana, Idaho, 95, 98, 105 degrees during the day. But at night, it cools down to a temperature where you need a sweatshirt to stand by the campfire.
Yeah. So here we have pretty good access to be able to see the ventilation, the ductwork, able to see this crawl space, if you will. What are some things that homeowners should keep in mind to make sure that a home inspector has access to the different parts of the home they need to access, and what do you want access to? So tell me what you will look at, what you won't look at. For instance, what I'm getting at is I know you're not going to like be inside any walls or doing any damage to a property
Right.
just in the name of inspecting.
Well, we don't disassemble anything. So if we need tools to disassemble something, it's not likely going to get disassembled by us. But uh, there's enough to our evaluation that we can identify issues in order to bring that to the attention of a buyer or a seller so that they can have an HVAC contractor, heat and air contractor come and take a look and provide the maintenance for those items. I think another item too is ensuring you do have proper ventilation, not just in the basement or crawl space, but also in the attic, because that ventilation, it all works together from the substructure to the attic space.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it also affects the efficiency of your forced air during the heating or the cooling months. So,
So owners, when they know that their home is going to be inspected, either for a pre-listing inspection or a buyer is having an inspector come by, this area, for instance, could be used for storage. I've seen a lot of basement rooms like this one full of storage boxes. So a quick tip would be to make sure you've cleared out a path to the water heater, right?
correct.
And to
Correct.
so that you can get access to it. And the attic, same story.
Same story, attic area to the mechanical components as well as the electric panel. Often we'll see all the stored items, people preparing to move, downsizing the amount of personal items they have in a home just before they list it, and it all gets stacked usually right in front of the electric panel.
Mm-hmm.
And often if they're just a few things, we'll move those out of the way. But if we find that there's going to be a lot of heavy boxes, potential for dropping or breaking anything, we don't want to damage anyone's materials. So we'll identify in our report that we are not able to gain access to that location. The reason we suggest that you provide access to the location because most buyers will want us to come back. And a trip fee can be a lot for them, but if the house wasn't ready, then it might become the burden of the seller in order to pay for the service.
The value in testing during pre-listing strikes me, as I described before, as good to know.
Mm-hmm.
Whether I would advise a home seller to install a mitigation system in advance of listing the home is debatable. There are some sellers who simply want to deliver the best home. They love their home. They want to deliver the best product they can to the market. They want the buyer to be thrilled and emotional and happy.
They have
And
that pride of ownership. Yeah.
then there's
Love
the
working with
seller
him.
who wants to spend as little time and effort as possible and make top dollar on the home. And I guess I don't judge either,
Right.
but that perspective may vary. So often in the conversations we have in a pre-listing, there is some nuance to that conversation. Like, what are your goals here? You simply want to know, or are you hoping to eliminate some things? Sometimes a seller is well aware of some issues. We've seen this going on for years, or we've had this repaired several times, or we've seen water coming in, or whatever it may be. And in that situation, they just want to know how bad it is. Like, how will this be reflected in a report? What's the likely response by a buyer? And that too is unpredictable. One of the things about what we do is you can't put yourself in the heads of buyers and sellers in many cases, where there are plenty of homes we inspect that, whether it's a pre-listing or for a buyer, where the home would be considered very distressed, meaning we take a lot of pictures, we note a lot of issues. And a buyer for that home can vary from anything from an investor who intends to do everything to it and make a lot of money to someone who's buying it not knowing of its condition and is going to suddenly step into a situation that's overwhelming. So there's an adjustment that has to occur based on the context and particularly the client.
And yeah, talk with your real estate professional about who the likely buyer is for
Sure.
a particular property too. Can help a home seller decide, a homeowner decide what they want to do proactively as far as repairs
Can I
or
add a
not.
side
Of course.
note to that?
Of course.
So we follow EPA protocol for radon testing. So we recommend it for every home.
So let me back up. Hold that thought.
Mhm.
Don't forget.
Okay.
So radon is an odorless natural gas that comes up out of the bedrock of the earth, comes up out of the ground. You cannot see it. You cannot smell it. You cannot know if it's in a home based on what the neighbor's home looks like or if the neighbor's home has a radon problem or not. This gas can build up in a home, and it is the second leading cause of lung cancer behind smoking. And the good news is, if it is something that you know about, it is easy to fix. There are mitigation systems. They can be installed in a day or two, and they can fix the problem. And it is something that measured in picocuries per liter. That's something I know the tipping point is 4. So we were talking about whether that is something a home seller, a homeowner should test for ahead of time and potentially mitigate.
To Roland's point, it's recommended for all homes. So the only exception there, not an exception, but the situation again, as I was saying, is in the case of a pre-listing inspection, it's still the homeowner to decide whether they want to move forward with that test. But they can expect, and this is important, that the potential buyer, is likely in the current market to want that test performed. So to know in advance of that may be helpful to you even in a pre-listing scenario, because I would say you should expect someone to want that test performed in most inspections that we perform.
Oh, and I wanted to add that should the gas levels be high in a home beyond what is considered safe levels, that is not a reflection of the quality or the craftsmanship or the care a person has put in their home at all whatsoever. It's nothing to be ashamed
Absolutely.
of.
Naturally occurring. It's nothing that can be helped.
Yeah.
And certainly nothing as a process of like you said, the craftsmanship. But I'd find another reason a seller might not test for radon is it might be something they don't want to know about, so they don't have to disclose it on the disclosure statement. We run into that quite a bit, and then they just address that as it comes. But like Adam said, we follow EPA protocols, so we recommend every home, and we believe that some homes are more susceptible to elevated radon levels than others. For instance, a home with a basement, and for a multitude of reasons.
Because it comes up out of the earth. So you're going to test it in any finished spaces where people may be sleeping or spending a large amount of time.
Well, absolutely. And if you're buying a home or selling a home with an unfinished basement, it's actually recommended by the EPA to test before you finish the basement and then after, because now you're more enclosing the space and potentially trapping the air. Additionally, it becomes a bit more difficult to remediate once the basement's finished.
I've heard of new construction being built with the piping in place.
Absolutely. We see it all the
going
time.
up through the middle of the home, but no fan or system to actually mitigate if it's not needed.
Correct.
But as to your point, it's easier to just go ahead and stick a pipe in for a potential vent should it be needed.
And that's to the point of the fact that the builders anticipate that they're likely to test. The buyers, it's just become such a common element of home inspections and property inspections that builders anticipate the test, and they understand it is very possibly going to be elevated, and that system is much more easily installed. They've already bored a hole in the slab. They've already installed the first pipe. It's simple to complete the process.
Well, the
That's so
EPA
smart.
has a radon map also that encompasses the entire country. However, there's a bit of bureaucracy associated with radon testing, and so several states or local municipalities don't record areas, or they don't require their home inspectors or radon testers to record those areas, so that the state and at a federal level that can identify those elevated locations on a map. So it's really left up to the municipality And of course, there are a lot of states still in the U.S. that don't have regulations for radon testing or mitigation.
And this is why, again, as a company, and I think it's consistent with a lot of home inspection firms, that we recommend the test. We get that question a lot, especially from folks who haven't bought a home in many years and they never have heard of this. They didn't encounter it in their last transaction. Suddenly it comes up, and you'll hear people saying, do we really need to test? It's on a crawl space, or it doesn't have a basement, or whatever scenario they throw at us. And we have evolved over the last several years. We've evolved to a place where pretty consistently our official recommendation is perform the test.
So how long should a homeowner plan for a pre-listing inspection to take?
It's a very good question. As you can imagine, we get often people ask, kind of what time should I be there to discuss, or if it's a home seller, when should we come back to talk with you? And it's always difficult to anticipate. I would say for most homes, ballparking, we would say between 2 and 3 hours probably. But as I would say, anytime I answer that question, I'm going to say the home sort of dictates the time it takes. The approach that we're going to take is we try to schedule more than ample time for an inspection without putting them right up against each other, so that we have time to sort of adapt and deal with what we're dealing with. Because, of course, wide variation in sort of the condition of the homes we inspect, and often difficult to anticipate that, even if we see a listing or look it up online. But I mean, you're usually talking around that 2 to 3 hour mark. But again, square footage, it means a lot. Age means a lot. Mm-hmm. Configuration means a lot. So a home like this that's got divided finished basement, crawl space, which is not unusual. These elements sort of do have an effect on the overall time it's going to take.
2 different attics.
Yeah, so it's difficult. And we face the question a lot, and we understand it because, people know what to expect. But
so you're going to provide a detailed, thorough written report for
Correct.
the homeowner to look through. But I always recommend, what do you think that the homeowner should, if at all possible, meet with you in person as you're wrapping up the inspection and hear firsthand from you what you have found?
We vastly prefer that. And the basis for this is very simple. A home inspection report is by design very cold. It is a presentation of observations, conditions we've identified as needing attention in some way, information that's important for you to have. However, it's important to understand that so much of what we put into an inspection report, exists on a spectrum. We talk about damage, for example. Well, how damaged is it? In a report, it's damaged. Here it is. But in a face-to-face conversation, certainly with a home seller or home buyer, there's more to it than that. Like, how prevalent is it? How much damage? How many locations? Or what's the impact on the home? So we welcome the opportunity to have a face-to-face conversation, because that's where we can impart some opinion regarding severity, regarding, okay, this is something, do we indeed recommend repair? But if you're balancing that against other repairs, where does it fall on the list? That's not something you're going to find in the inspection report, because it's not for us to say. The report is an encapsulation of everything, the universe of conditions we've encountered, varying severity. Whereas in the face-to-face conversation, we can say, it's true, absolutely would recommend that repair, but it's not your biggest fish to fry.
Mm-hmm. Love that. So do you offer recommendations on addressing any issues that are found?
Yes and no. We are careful not to necessarily try to spoon feed repairs, because we are typically going to, even if we know how to make the repair, we're going to tend to defer to a professional to prepare it properly. So you'll see things like that. Consult a qualified professional for appropriate repair. Consult an electrician and the point being, we may have an opinion, and we might even impart during a face-to-face, this is what they're probably going to do. But we stop short of saying this is exactly what they're going to do. Now, there are exceptions. I mean, we're talking about, so many thousands of possible findings that some things we can say this is what they're going to do. But I mean, if it's something more involved, we're going to deliberately defer to the person doing that work. It's much like the question we often get about how much something is going to cost. We may have a pretty good understanding of what it's likely to cost, But it's difficult for us to provide that information because we have to be very deliberate about expressing that this is an opinion. We do home inspections now. While we may have done that work much in the past, it's been years and we don't price this anymore. So we always recommend asking an appropriate pro so you get real numbers. Multiple pros, ideally.
So how can homeowners ensure they are working with a qualified and experienced home inspector?
That's also a very good question. It's not simple. I mean, if you're buying a home, you're moving from out of state, it's one thing. If you live in the home, you're doing a pre-listing inspection. You have to use relationships. Agents, we often defer to the agents because they will often have lists of people because they're frequently dealing with that problem. They've received a report, action needs to be taken, it calls for an electrician. Well, they've probably got 1 or 2 or 5 people whose numbers they pass around for that purpose.
Oh, right, definitely. That's part of the value of real estate professionals.
And we avoid making recommendations for specific contractors unless we have a very, very solid opinion of
That's fair. Now, how do you recommend a person find a home inspector that they feel that they can trust?
Similar answer.
Okay.
But the vast majority of our work does come from the referral by agents. And that's because agents who've worked with us, obviously agents form an opinion about the people that they work with. And, there's wide variety amongst home inspectors. That's a good thing. There's a wide range of sort of approaches and methodologies and manners of communication. So I would say that,
that's definitely true.
But most of the time people find us through their agent in the midst of the transaction, which we love. But of course, there's, like with anything, there's plenty of folks who find us other ways through our certifying entities, which maintain lists. These are certified pros in the area. We might get calls related to that.
So 2 things.
All over.
It's interesting that you mentioned methods of communication. That is something that I will take a home buyer client or even a home seller client, their personality and who they're going to enjoy working with better.
Sure.
I will take that into consideration when I'm suggesting here's someone you might want to call for whatever service. You mentioned certification. So is there a certifying board or company that
Sure.
inspectors?
Well, we as a firm are all ASHI certified, which is the American Society of Home Inspectors. There's also another organization which serves a very similar process or purpose rather called InterNACHI. I'm not sure what their acronym stands for. Okay. But basically, those are the 2 big names nationally. So we are ASHI certified inspectors, and that's a fairly intensive process of certification. There's other tests people can take, like a lot of industries, you can go and get some designation, some credential that calls you a home inspector. Many of those are not as intensive and as powerful, for lack of a better word, as something like this ACI designation, because you've got the backing of an entity that represents thousands of people who do what we do, maintain high standards. We operate and intend at all inspections to operate under their protocols. So it's something that we are in service to at all times in doing our inspections, and that's a sort of a guarantee for our clients that we're at least going to maintain a high level and consistent approach to what we do.
This has been great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else we need that we haven't talked about that a homeowner should really be thinking about if they're going to sell their home in the next few months or even 6 to 12 to 2 years? Well,
I would say an emphasis on one point because it goes to something we just said, and it's something that we as a firm emphasize to an enormous degree. We believe an important function of a home inspector is to be able to adequately educate our clients. There is a large range, as I said, of people who do what we do. And there are people ranging from they'll disappear, you don't know they were there, and the report shows up one day and you can't reach them to discuss it. That's an extreme. To the way we prefer to approach it which is we are always available to our clients. It's not simply day of. While we welcome that face-to-face, in fact, encourage that face-to-face conversation, that is a debrief. That's here's what we found. They're going to get this formal multi-page detailed document. But after the fact, We take pride in the fact that our clients are able to call us 3 months down the road and we can open their report and address a question for them. And also during the debrief,
yes, I had that earlier this week.
answering questions and clarifying conditions. Why do you care about what this report just said? Why does that matter? Simply dumping a list of findings in people's lap. If you're not knowledgeable about homes, and many people aren't, and that's not a problem, then what does this mean? Do I care about that thing? So we do emphasize educating, clarifying, and I would say, in a nutshell, communication. Communication is everything with what we do.
Earlier this week, I had a home buyer from a few months ago who had a question, not a problem or concern, but just a question for one of your inspector teams. It was Charlie, and I texted him, and he immediately got back to me and got back to her and answered her question. And
we think that's a huge differentiator amongst
huge.
home inspectors. And again, we put a lot of emphasis on that, and I can say that not everybody who does what we do treats it the same way.
I love that. My parents were both school teachers, so I see my role too as a real estate professional as being one of an educator, of wanting to provide my clients all the information so that they can understand any given situation throughout the home selling, the home buying process to make the best decisions for themselves and your families. And that's so
of course.
We find ourselves both in that role.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we view agents the same way. Agents are an important partner for us, not just the referrals that we receive, but at the same time, agents who pay attention during the inspection or are knowledgeable in these things can also help on the back end with, for example, that process of discerning what from this report is going to be negotiated. We're often not there for that part. We might offer an opinion during a conversation, but generally when that amendment is being written, we're not really part of that conversation. So
that's my job.
That's where expertise on the part of agents and sort of an ability to sort of understand what's been presented and to be able to sort of identify what really matters from what's more of that kind of nitpicking caliber issue.
Exactly. Yep, that's my job. I'm happy to help discuss that with my clients and help them form a strategy on those negotiations. So where can we find you?
Well, you can find us online, www.pelorusga.com, and you can certainly call our number. You can talk to our office. We've got our operations manager, Adam Cardellino, who will help you with any scheduling issue, helps with all the setup, gaining access for the inspectors, coordinating schedules and timing. You can book us online through our website. You don't have to pick up the phone to call us. You can make a request for an inspection that way. We're out there. We're not hard to find.
This was great. Thank
you. Happy to do it.
You have been tuning in to How to Sell Your Atlanta Home with Sage+Grace, smart home owner strategies for successful real estate sales. Selling your home in Atlanta can be a smooth, fast, and profitable experience with the right guidance. I am Judy Jernigan, founder and team lead of Sage+Grace Realty Group and a partner at Clario Real Estate. I'm a licensed broker in both North Carolina and Georgia. And this series is dedicated to providing homeowners with the tools and knowledge needed for a successful home sale. Please give us a like or subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us on How to Sell Your Atlanta Home with Sage+Grace. I'm Judy Jernigan, and I love helping homeowners sell smarter with less stress and better results. Who do you know with real estate questions? Please connect us so we can make confident, well-informed decisions and get the best possible outcomes together. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a 5-star review. It helps more homeowners get the smart strategies they need for a successful sale. Head to sageandgracere.com to learn more about working with me and the Sage+Grace real estate team. Explore all our show episodes, and when you're ready, book a chat directly with me, Judy Jernigan, moving you forward with sage advice and grace.